Okay, great. I'd like to welcome everybody here today. This has been one hell of a ride over the years. And for the younger guys, us boomers, and I'm on the tail end of the boomers, okay, and I know maybe that's a derogatory term, but I don't mind. It sounds good, being an explosive guy, being a boomer, right? So a lot of the people that were ahead of me have retired. A lot of the guys I knew and really liked passed on, and other people, have moved on or whatever, and it's important to get that information over to you guys, because otherwise you'd just be like, well, what's going on here? So anyway, I'm not going to talk about that anymore, and I'm going to hit up the first slide, so hit forward one. Okay, and I'm going to define a detonator, and this is important, right, because people don't quite cotton onto this sometimes. And I've got it up there. It's an item used to cause an explosive to detonate, okay, where detonation is the reaction of an explosive which exceeds its sonic velocity and results in shockwave. Right, so if you were to fire black powder, you would be using the squid, basically, rather than the detonator. So I'm here today because I was around the start of electronic detonators, and I was very heavily involved with that. And you'll see that as we go on. And it was a period of really significant change in blasting in general. In the area of initiation, shocks to systems were slowly taking over from electric caps, and many different initiation systems were available. Unfortunately, a lot of us were hot to trot in those days on technology, and we were a little bit before our time. And as such, much of the technology developed in the 70s and early 80s relied on accurate blasting caps. And we didn't get electronic blasting caps on the market for some time. So we developed all this great stuff and ideas, and then it just didn't happen, and people retired and moved on, which is kind of, and Kurt here's nodding, and I'm going to mention a story about you, Kurt, as we go a bit further on, right? Which really makes the point, and he knows what I'm talking about, pretty much. Okay, so here's my perspective of the dance of the detonators, or should I say, dance of the blasting caps, and my involvement in the last 40 years or so. Okay, you're going to hear some names that might not be familiar to you youngsters, but perhaps when you finish you'll have a better understanding of our industry from a historical perspective. And one name that's going to pop up a lot is Anders Persson, who's a great guy, and many of the things are related to that because of the time period in which, when I came over here in 1981, those early 80s were really rocking years in the explosive industry. There were all sorts of things going on. Okay, so I'm going to base my presentation around key points and items of interest with some amusing stories as we go. So here goes. Now, I'm just going to show you this. These, every time I hit a highlight, it's a change, but you've already gone onto it, so don't hit the screen. Okay. So I'm going to start the beginning of my career over 40 plus years ago, and I'm going to go back to the mid-70s, and I visited an old fluorspar mine, okay, in England, and it was called Speedwell Caverns, and there it is. And it went back, actually, some of that to Roman mining times. And it's flooded, as you can see, and they've done that for a boat tour, so hit the next one. And, okay. So that gives you an idea of the scale of the tunnels. They weren't that big. There's not that much water back a couple of foot. But that's the original tunnels that they blasted out with black powder. And so the limestone there is really hard rock. Okay, so it took a lot to get that blast done. You couldn't chip it out. You had to blast it, and all they had was black powder back then. But back then, and this is important for you young guys, right? What they had set off black powder, and this is like the 1700s, 1800s, all they had was goose quills and straw packed with black powder for a fuse. Right, the problem is, gooses don't get much bigger than this, right? So you're not going to get a goose quilt bigger than so much. And it used to be sold at threepence a fathom, and a fathom is 6 feet, right? So those old things for you. And they'd shoot one hole at a time. Okay, and what it'd be young guys in here that would actually get to light the charge. Okay, and, because you're the faster ones. Like somebody like me wouldn't survive these days doing that sort of thing, right? And you got to understand, back in those days, they didn't have electric lights. They had candles. If you were lucky, they might have an oil lamp or something like that the guy might carry with him, but they put little stubs of candles along the tunnel. And they'd run like Billio, and then they'd run for a little alcove. They'd get into this little alcove like this. When it blasted, all that rock went flying past them. And it was quite dangerous. And, there were, in those days, there were the brave, okay, which would be you young guys, right? And there'd be the old, but there were few old and brave. It was quite dangerous. So what happened is we come up with safety fuse. So let's hit the next slide. And William Bickford, and it goes back there, as you can see, to 1831. And William Bickford was a really important guy because he had all this ideas, and he went to Cornwall, and I've got about 16 pages, by the way, of actual script to go with this that's going to be available. But I'm just highlight on it. And he was watching one of his friends at a rope factory, and he was watching that, and he thought, wow, I could make fuse that way. So they developed safety fuse. Okay, and you can read all about this on the internet and stuff like that on Wikipedia, and some pretty good articles and everything. But you can see some examples there. I've got military on the left, and then you'll see the safety fuse there. Now, there were some important guys there, and there were 3 guys. There was Bickford, and then he had George Smith, and then there was Thomas Davy. And Davy Bickford still, well, not quite. A couple of years ago, it's been taken over by the NX, right? Okay, but I don't know if it still has the Davy Bickford name or not. But they were still there. And you'll see here, it says Ensign Bickford, and that was the Bickford Company over here in the United States that was absorbed by Dyno. Now, Ensign Bickford there's also Ensign Bickford Industries left, which does the military side, okay, which isn't part of Dyno. They make a lot of PTN, det cord, and stuff like that. Okay, so that's the... in fact, actually, Davy Bickford still had the old machines. Okay, I was told by one of the Davy Bickford employees they still had the old machines developed by Thomas Bickford all those years back. And basically it's a core of a black powder with some rope put around it, jute, and then it was twisted tightly and then had coating on it to waterproof it and keep it together. And you can see various sorts of, you see the sword brand over there and different types of it. And it burned around about 40 seconds a foot, but, and they called it safety fuse because you could have any length you wanted to, rather than how quick you can run. Okay, and those quills, depending on how you pack that powder in, is consistency. So sometimes they're burnt fast and sometimes they're burnt slow, and sometimes they might stop and then start again. So it was a very, very dangerous occupation. A lot of people got killed by flying rock when the explosives went off. But with safety fuse, you could get to a good distance away. And it sold for the same amount, threepence per fathom, as goose quilt. Okay? So a lot of us wouldn't think safety fuse is what you'd say really safe these days. And the reason is for it is it's not a command detonation system. I like a command detonation system, and that means you press the button, okay, and it goes boom. But when you light something, and you look at what the minimum regulations are for MSHA, okay, you've got minutes. Okay, and all sorts of things can happen in that time period, right? So, and when I was over in England as and a graduate, I heard lots and lots of stories from people in the industry what happened. Now, I've got one here, and I don't know how true it is, but I was told this, okay, by what would be an Orica employee now. It was Nobel explosives guy. And, it was in Saudi Arabia, and the guys, I'm not sure it was an oil job or what it was, but they had a case of dynamite, and they had about half a case left over. Well, in the military, what they do is they don't take things back to the magazines, they do a blow-in-place, right, and clear up shot. So anyway, they got this case of dynamite and took it behind a big dune, put a blasting cap in it, lit the fuse, and walked off. And that wouldn't have been too bad. But in the meantime, some camels came from around another dune, and camels, being rather curious animals, came up to check the dynamite out, right? Okay, maybe it was edible, I don't know. But anyway, so that's another story. Okay, but unfortunately, it ended up with camel burger everywhere. And that wouldn't have been too bad. It came to their untimely demise, but that wouldn't have been too bad. But in Saudi Arabia, camels are very, very highly priced because they race them. And it wasn't racing, it was off-season. And they just let them go in the desert, right? So this resulted in the two explosives gentlemen being interred in jail. Now, my own personal story was I was firing large charges on Range 24 at Fort Leonard Wood, and I had a couple of them. And, I was going to fire one and fire the next, separately, but really in quick succession. Now, I got the okay on the radio from range control, and they were having a military exercise going on at the time, but they were not supposed to be on Range 24. Well, anyway, there was a whole bunch of F-16s, National Guard F-16s, just flying around. And so I called it in. I called in 2 charges to range control, and all of a sudden, this F-16 started to loiter around the range, right? So, damn, he's going to hot dog or something. But anyway, so I fired the first charge, and woof, and it was military explosive, big old black mushroom cloud, like a mini nuclear explosion, right? And it starts going up. And all of a sudden, this F-16 comes over the range, flies straight through the middle of the mushroom cloud, cutting it up and swirling it with his wings and everything, and then he goes, and then does a victory roll, right? However, I had already, between me firing it, I just quickly tied up the wires for the second charge, and I was about to hit the button when he did it. It would have been rather embarrassing if I'd knocked an F-16 out of the air, right? So even though it really wouldn't have been my fault, but that sort of thing is just difficult to explain. It's like, I don't think he's here today, but he should be around somewhere. One of my students, we had a bit of a heavy party at an ISE many years ago, and he went running forward and nearly fell over the balcony, and I grabbed him, but that's a long story. Phil might tell you later on. But anyway, it doesn't look too good when you lose your students at conferences. That wasn't the first time with students. Okay, so let's go on to detonating explosives. Now, we've got to have something to... Whoa, look at that. Guess what that is? That's a nitroglycerin can, right? That's one of those things you just walk around really delicately with. That's an actual nitroglycerin can there. And it was invented by Sobrero in 1847, and he said it's so dangerous it should never be made again. And, of course, there's a whole bunch of dudes in this room, right? And if somebody says, wow, this stuff's so dangerous it never should be done again, what are you going to do? Yeah, okay, you're on the same page on this one. Okay? So, and then... it used to be very dangerous, actually, and something you probably won't know, is because they didn't understand about pH and its reactivity. And that's why if you go around to a dynamite plant, they spend a lot of time washing the nitroglycerin to make sure it brings the pH into a stable region. Otherwise, it's quite unstable. Okay, by the way, because nitric acid is not only an acid, but it's a strong oxidizer. Right? So, anyway, they want to get rid of that extra spent acid. Okay, so next one. So what happens is, here's Alfred Nobel, okay, and he was sent by his father, a Swedish industrialist, to work with Sobrero to learn about it, because he said, hey, cool, this is pretty good. And he made a lot of military stuff. Let's, make some nitroglycerin, and then we can make some explosives, right? And he came back, and his dad set up a nitroglycerin plant, and we'll have a look at that in a minute. And, okay, he's the inventor of dynamite. So, next one. Now, this is their first dynamite plant, and that's where they originally had, the nitroglycerin nitrator as well. And this is taken, this picture around about 1900, so it's been a well-established plant by that time. You can notice that they're doing a fairly good job because it's not destroyed. I went to, in I think 2002, I went down to Mexico and gave a short course on blasting, and I bring up dynamite on my presentation. And they said, oh, we don't have any more dynamite. And I go, oh, your last plant blew up then? And they go, oh, yeah. So what more can I say? Right. There's one remaining dynamite plant in North America, and that's down at Carthage in Missouri, not too far from us. It's about a 3-hour drive. I used to take my advanced class. Kyle will be taking it now, and who's taken over from me. And the reason that's the last remaining plant, because it blew up in 60s sometime, was it 70s? And it just about destroyed it, and they rebuilt it, and it became the youngest dynamite plant and most modern. That's the reason why it survived. And now they had another big explosion back there, in the 90s, I believe. I'm trying to think when it was, but they had a batch process. But they now use Biazzi nitrators. Well, they were, but this was a batch process. Okay, so when you've got a batch process, you're making thousands of pounds at the same time, and if it goes, kind of bad. I think they got the pH wrong, and it ran away. And it's literally when you get a runaway reaction, it's everybody goes, oh crap, the temperatures are going to run away, and they all ran away and got to safety before it blew and made a huge crater. Okay, so the story is that Alfred Nobel spilt a little bit, and it mixed in with this stuff called Kaisergür, which was what they used for packing back then. I mean, now we use plastic bags, right? Airbags. You get something from Amazon, yeah. Well, before that it was peanuts, and before that it was perlite. Some of the old guys will remember perlite. Remember that golden coloured stuff? It's like pot mica. Before that we had dirt. But it was lightweight dirt, because it was the lightest weight dirt they could find, because, that's a lot of expense is the weight you're shipping around. So anyway, this was Kaisergür diatomaceous earth, very absorbent actually, and it absorbed the nitroglycerin. And Alfred Nobel's like, ooh, cool. Well, I don't think he said cool, but it was Swedish anyway, so he could cool in Swedish. And he made a liquid, turned a liquid into a paste, okay, of varying consistencies. And now all of a sudden he says, wow, I can, before you couldn't pour nitroglycerin into upholes, right? But now I've got this paste, I can put it in sticks, and I can stick it in upholes, I can stick it in horizontal holes, and I don't have to worry about it draining out. And he goes to test it. In those days they used a hammer. You took a pinch and you hit it with a hammer. You don't do it like this, guys, because otherwise if it goes off, the hammer comes up and hits you in the forehead. And over the shoulder, and you hit it until it goes off. And then you know how sensitive it is, if you're making something like that. And use a little teeny pinch, right? Not huge amounts like the National Labs did and had a big accident. But, okay. So if you don't know, you just work with small amounts, okay? Because then it makes a little bang rather than the big bang. So anyway, he does this, and it it was a lot harder to set off than nitroglycerin. Now, I've seen nitroglycerin set off with a hammer, by the way, while I was up in Scotland at the old Nobel Explosives plant in Ardeshire. Okay, so let's have another look at that Vintervik, and you can see the kind of lake or sea going out there. Next one, please. And this is what it looks like today. That was the place where Swedifo was, and there's the old office building and the remaining works and chimney there. This is a fairly modern picture, by the way, and of course it had been closed for a long time, but that was the location of the Swedish Teutonics Foundation. And that's where my first dealings with Per Anders Persson was, because not only was he the head of research at Nitro Nobel, but he was also the head of the Swedish Teutonics Foundation. Okay. Let's hit that next one. Okay. Now, Nobel was a very shrewd business person, and he patented dynamite, and he went in and said, hey, you can use my patent if I get 50% of the business, right? But you have to pay for the plant and everything, and then I make 50% of your profits. And it was that good a product. He became very, very wealthy, and then on his death, he had the foundation for the Nobel Prizes, put in place. But I think the most important about Nobel was he had this detonating explosive, which was safe. It was so insensitive compared to nitroglycerin, this Wile E. Coyote bit, and it was safe to transport and everything like that. So much safer than before, that he marketed it as the first safety explosive. You could even smoke around it. Now, you couldn't do that around black powder. Okay, so, not that I'm saying go and smoke around it, but, things were different over 100 years ago. You've got to understand that, okay? So anyway, he actually needed a reliable method to set off his dynamite and other detonating explosives, and he invented the blasting cap there, as we can see. Okay, the original the original ones were copper shells. You might see a lot of ones these days that are actually aluminum. I think they're a bit cheaper to make, but you can't use them in coal mines that are underground gassy. So if you see a copper cap these days, you can also use it underground in gassy coal mines, right? It's better, copper shells are actually, than aluminum, because aluminum burns. Okay. The original cap had mercury fulminator in it, and it's gone over to lead stiffenate and other different compounds over the years. And it was what happened, or the way we use it is, next one, it was the original ones were crimped there to safety fuse. Okay. A little bit dangerous, that crimping process, but if you know what you're doing, it's not, right? But a lot of people don't know what they're doing, have had lost fingers in the past, and because of that, these days, you can't really buy blasting caps anymore that aren't pre-crimped and got safety fuse on them. Okay, now, there's a lot of interesting stuff going on, and a lot of work there. Electric caps were next, right? So we're going to electrify this cap. And Benjamin Franklin in 1750 made a commercial blasting cap. Now, it was a spark thing, and it had black powder on it, and it was for setting off black powder. So it wasn't really a detonator, okay? But as far as using electricity to set an explosive on fire inside a blasting cap, or have something like that, I was in Amethysta do Sul, Enrique's over there, and artisanal mining, so it's like going back 100 years, right, or so. And these guys were actually making their own, so hit the next one. They were hit the next one. Sorry, I got the Amethysta. These artisanal mines, these little holes and going into the rock, and they're pulling out these beautiful geodes, right? And they're using black powder, and they're actually making their own black powder. And the way they set it off, they got a single wire, and then they looped it. I wish I had a picture of it. But they looped it in a little spiral, and they stuck it into the black powder, and then the other end, they pull the wire out and they connect it into a light socket to shoot it. I kid you not, he totally guarantee that I'm talking the truth here. And you say, how can you do that? Well, the power went down from the light socket, okay, and it went down to the end where it was just spiraled up. And the black powder is conductive, okay, so, and then it earthed to the ground, right? So you had a circuit. It's absolutely just, I was really impressed. I thought it was quite good. So, let's go on to the first electric detonator. Okay, next one. There we are. Okay, Julius Smith. This dude is awesome. He's the father of electric detonators. He introduced the first electric detonator as a spark gap one, okay, that was capable of shooting dynamite in 1868. He then went on to make the hot wire detonator, okay, which is the basic thing we have these days in electric caps, in 1875. Plus, he made the first portable rack and pinion firing box. Okay, that's absolutely awesome. And he did that in 1878. So in 10 years there, he'd done all this stuff. Now, lots of improvements had been done in electric matches. Okay, next one, please. Okay, and in Germany in the early 1900s, but this sort of match here didn't come onto the market in the US until the 1950s, and it was bought in by Atlas Powder just after they'd been purchased by ICI Explosives, which was Nobel Explosives and a whole bunch of other different companies at that time. This one's a little bit newer because it's got a static plug in it, but basically very, very similar to what you see there. Okay, so the next one is shock tube. Okay, hop on shock tube. Oh no, sorry, it's okay, that's good. Here's some of those caps. This is a Hercules matches being actually produced. Okay, back there at 55. See the gals there making them. Next one, please. Okay, and what's happened? The first electric delay units were, and I try to tie this down, but it's very, very difficult, introduced in the early 1900s. Okay, so you see I've got a delay cap there. So that was a long time ago. We had delay caps, electric delay caps, over 100 years ago, which is something. So electric was king for many, many years. The delays, the original ones were kind of like black powder delays, and they were called standard delays, and there were LPs, long periods. And then later on, because they figured out that MSs actually work better and give better fragmentation, they started coming out with the MS series of caps that we call MS, the millisecond delay series. Okay, and then along came shock tube. Okay, and it's Per-Anders Persson was the inventor of shock tube and the non-L system. He worked for Nitro Nobel in Sweden, and he was bestowed a Lifetime Achievement Award by the ISEE. I can't remember what the name of the award is. It's still one of the top ones. You'll see later on there'll be a sheet of people that get these awards and everything. He died a few years ago, but the guy was absolutely fantastic and a really good guy and mentor as well. I want to say that about him. Absolutely super top-notch guy. Okay, now in 1983, in conjunction with the first frag blast, I went in to present at, I had an invite to Nitro Nobel's Grutorp plant in Sweden to discuss cap inaccuracies and give a talk on electric detonators. Okay, so... okay, I'll just leave that there. Okay, go back one, will you? Super. So, back when I started over here in 81, there was, okay, non-L was on the market, but people were like, oh, I don't know, this is, one of the guys told me, because, man, this is absolutely perfect for shaft sinking because it's gnarly down there, and you get all these current leakages with electric detonators, and this non-L stuff is just absolutely perfect for shaft sinking, but I wouldn't use it anywhere else because it was too expensive. That's what they said. And then when I talked to Perandus, he personally told me that non-L was going to replace electric caps because it was a superior system and a lot better. And it was. Okay. However, even Perandus person got it wrong. Okay. Non-L was replaced electric caps because of truck radio dispatch. And I remember the guys at mine saying, I'll never put radios in our haul trucks in the early 80s because they'll just be talking to each other and they'll drive off the road and we'll have accidents and all sorts of stuff. But now you would not find a truck anywhere, a US mine, without a radio in it, okay? Because of the fantastic savings in money and productivity that truck radio dispatch brought us. So, okay, next one, please. Here we are, the rise of non-L. The real rise of non-L is SLP20. Okay, you might say, I'm being a bit harsh here, but if you've ever had a look at SLP20, it's gobbledygook. I mean, you've got to have a PhD in electrical engineering to understand it. Now, I got a PhD in mining engineering, and man, it gives me a headache trying to read that. Okay, and everybody I think who's read it, who's a blaster, will go like this with the charts and everything. So what happened, people got this phobia about, oh my God, we've got radios and our blast's going to blow up and everything, and as soon as somebody hits a keys, a mic and whatever. And I remember one day, young Keith Henderson, who works for Buckley. We got any Buckley guys here today? I'm sure we've got some Buckley. We've got some Buckley ones. Yeah, Chris Searing's there. He rings me up, and I'm pretty sure it was Keith. He says, hey, Paul, I got to shoot underneath a radio tower. And I've got this SLP20, right? It's IME publication. I don't understand it. I go, me neither. It's like, come on. So I said, you guys, okay, because that was then Econics, you guys sell non-L, don't you? And he goes, yeah. I said, why didn't you do that? Then you don't have to bother about it. Worrying about it and, worried you can't sleep at night because you think somebody's going to blow up or whatever. Because the stuff's immune to radio stuff, chatter and stuff. So he goes, oh, man, that is superb, Paul. Hangs up, okay. And that story there is pervasive across all of the industry. And the insurance people and the safety people, they bugabooed electric caps till they disappeared. Okay. So, next one. So we're slow to change in our industry. Okay. Turn off two-way radio and cell phones. Well, it didn't used to be cell phones, but it was turn off two-way radio, right? And you still see these things stuck up on road contracts. Okay? Even if there are no electric caps and everything's non-L. And if you look in the OSHA regulations, that's where it says you have to put it, there is no mention of shock tube systems at all in the regulations. Okay, and you've got to understand this stuff's been around for 40 years. Okay, so I just got to tell you that stuff, right? So it's a bit weird. Oh, trade names. You'll hear me say non-L a lot. I'm going to get forward quick because I've got to move. But okay, in England, where I originally came from, okay, whatever was the predominant brand or the first one, okay, then you tended to use that. So a vacuum cleaner in England would be called the Hoover, right? Catherine, still called the Hoover?
Sure is.
There we are, okay, right. She's not quite fresh off the boat, but fair. Now, non-L being manufactured, invented by Perandus and manufactured in Sweden and everything, it was licensed Stents and Bitford in the US. And, okay, and it was non-L was also a good replacement for detonating core because electric caps were thought for big, large diameter holes were too long. You're most likely to break those wires because of powder slump. And that's what happens in big holes. You get powder slump, right? Okay, the powder slumps inside them. So anyway, so it was a good replacement for det cord. And det cord was known to be pretty bad because when it detonated, it killed some of the explosive around it, about an inch worth, and also blew a hole in the stemming, especially if you've got 50 grain, and then all the gases rushed out of the hole and blew the stemming. And you ended up with very high muck piles instead of distributed muck piles, and they knew that for a long time in the industry. Okay, some other systems. Hercudet. Oh yeah, next one, please. There's a whole bunch of things popped up, and Rico had this one, and which is funny because, well, that ended up with Dyno, and of course Dyno had Nitrogen and Bell, which invented non-L. But anyway, we're kind of screwed up. It's kind of the explosive industry is like a family tree in Arkansas, right? So, no, really. Okay. So, it's my perspective of it. So here's the Hercudet system.
Mark, you might want to say Mississippi.
Mississippi, there we are, Mississippi, okay. Haven't been in Mississippi much, but anyway, probably a good thing. Right. So what we have here is this Hercudet system, which was a tube, and instead of having this explosive powder inside it, I'm not going to go into non-iron detail because you can read all about that. This had a gas and air, or oxygen, and it was actually acetylene. And acetylene is a great gas because it's got huge explosive limits on it. It's hardly anything to almost everything. Acetylene will blow up. Well, that might be a little bit of an over-exaggeration, but it's fairly close, right? So they pumped this acetylene down. So you had acetylene bottle in your oxygen or air bottle, and then it went through all the caps, and then at the end you had a detector to tell you if acetylene was coming out right. So then you knew what it was. And I remember Peabody's Linville mine. The guy who was head blaster there, Mike Powell, he said to me, he said, "Oh, I love this Hercules system because, whenever I need a new blaster, all I have to do is go out and hire a plumber." Because you had to fix all the pipes together and everything, and it was easy to train them, right? Okay. But that's what he said. I mean, really, yeah, straight up over the top. And, okay, let's have something amusing here. And have a look at the Hercules system. Come on, hit the next one. Okay. Uh-oh, I didn't take that. I thought I took it off. Yeah, no, you didn't. Oh, well. Yeah, okay. Bring it down. Maybe you could have just moved it, but whatever. Okay, we're back up again. So this is Hercudet system, and this is over 100-foot face here. It's a blast cast, and we were working on that at the time. Can you hit the next one? This is quite amusing. Just hit again. There you go. Just leave it. It should go. How fast can a blaster run? That's 3 frames a second on a motor drive. And I'm inside a blast chamber. Oh dear. I'm inside a blast chamber. Don't worry about the next side. It'll be okay. I'm inside a blast chamber, and I'm watching this occur, and I said to the guys, look, I hadn't been around that long then, but even I could tell it was going to blow off that end because they'd swapped detonation. This was the open end of the blast, by the way. And so I said, hey, you might want to, this is going to throw some stuff around, and it was their blast, and they go, yeah. I said, you might want to shoot that from inside this blast shelter, and they go, no, you're just a wuss, right? And so anyway, as soon as they blasted, they went, oh shit, ran and dived under the dozer. It was quite funny. It was Indiana red clay. It looked pretty funny afterwards. So anyway, Atlas Powder also, next one, Atlas Powder also developed a system. And it's a little bit harsh, but Atlas Powder doesn't exist anymore, right? Okay. This one, very, very similar, but because of the patents on non-L, they actually had a little string inside that actually had all that HMX and aluminum stuck to it. So here remembers it. Okay, and it was another way of getting around the patent, I guess. They were pushing this until the patent ran out, and this went off the market fairly quickly as soon as the patent went out, because it was a lot easier to make than non-L, I think. Okay, next one, please. Okay, easy debts. Okay. I'll tell another story about this as Ensign Bickford rep. And in the old days, you had to be a little bit careful of the reps, right? Because the reps were really good at taking clients out in the evening, right? And then you wouldn't see them until at least 11 o'clock in the morning because they were pretty well hungover. And you see all the old guys going, I remember the days. There we are. It's nostalgia for you. Okay, everything, I guess, is a little bit different these days. There's lots of stories I could tell you, but let's go on. I'd almost run out of non-L leading line in the Ensign Bickford. I said to the Ensign Bickford guy, hey, you got something? He goes, yeah. He goes, I got something in the trunk of my car. Right, so, yeah, well, actually, it was legal because it's 1.4B. So unless you got over 1,000 pounds of net explosive weight, you don't have to placard it, right? So, okay. So, no, really, okay. And it's hard to get over 1,000 pounds of net explosive weight. It's like a tractor trailer full. So anyway, he gave it to me, and it was about a third of a roll, and it got the end was off it, and it wasn't stored upright. So if you ever store your non-L2, store it upright. Don't let it roll around, because what happens in that black little thing on the end, that stops moisture getting in, and then some of that powder falls off because it's held on by static electricity on the inside to a certain extent. And then when rolling around, it ends up, if you've got a circle like that, ends up the bottom of the circle where you've got these spiral, right? And so I take this to a demonstration, I shoot it, and I'm holding it in my hand, and it zippered on me. And it was like, it zippered every low place, it zippered on, and I had my thumb over it. And it put a hefty whelp on my thumb, and it was quite painful. I didn't break the skin, but I had a hard spot on my thumb for about a couple of months after that. And, you know, you can't go, right in front of a bunch of people. Like, you've got to suck it up, right? It's very real. It's like, okay. So, anyway, where have we got? Oh, here's another funny one. It's a really good story, and I'll have to go on from that. I'm allowed to go over an hour, apparently. So anyway, we had all this. Surlyn was a problem. It was the plastic that was used. I probably spelt it wrong in the. I couldn't find it anywhere on the internet. And okay, that was the plastic that was used in that early non-L. And the problem was it allowed water to go in. So these things, they knew it was a problem, so they had these things in these big mylar bags with desiccants in and stuff like that in those days. And we got given a whole bunch of it that sat on a dock somewhere and was due to go out to Iran when the Iranian Revolution occurred. Right, and it just sat there. So they're going, oh, what are we going to do with this? It's been sitting here for 3 years or whatever. Oh, no, we'll give it to the university. So we got it, and as soon as we started opening it, we started to have problems pretty quick because of the moisture. And these things weren't firing properly and dying and stuff like that. So Troy Harris, who was the mine supervisor, well, Norm Smith, who was the faculty person at that point, said to Troy, oh, we need to get rid of these. So Troy decides he's going to burn them, right? So he gets this big burn barrel. These are LPs. And he throws these big bundles of caps into this burn barrel and retreats. Well, the problem was he hadn't thought it out. And I heard about he was burning caps. I thought, oh, my God, this is going to be hilarious, right? And one of the caps would go off, and it would sympathetically detonate some others. But some it wouldn't set off, it wouldn't sympathetically detonate. It would actually throw them out, but the non-L had been initiated. So now you've got these things flying through the air, and some of them going bang, bang, bang in the air, and some going over trees and just lying there on top of the trees unshot. And he turned several neighbouring trees into Christmas trees, right? It was very festive, but it was hilarious. Then at another ISE presentation a couple of years back, there was this guy who decided he'd got a way to burn electric non-L caps, and of course he had the same problems, and everybody was extremely amused, to say the least. Okay. Okay, so now we're on to easy debts. And there was this guy who worked, and some of you know him, the older guys do, Paul Yeager from Kansas City, and just a little bit older than me, not much. And I get a phone call from him, and he's really enthusiastic. And he goes, "Hey, this is Paul." I go, "Yeah, Paul." And he said, "Hey, we got these new products out, and they're called Easy Debts. They haven't hit the market yet, but I've got some advanced samples. Would you like some for class?" I go, "Well, sure, yeah, okay." He goes, "Okay, I'll send you some." Right? So 2 days later, I get a couple of boxes of these Easy Debts. Okay, arrive, FedEx, right? Okay, because it's 1.4B. And so they arrive FedEx, and I try them out. I open up the box, and there were no instructions. This was before the internet, right? And if I had done it anyway, it hadn't already been launched, so there were no instructions anyway out there to find. So I open these up, and there's this double-ended cap. It's got non-L2 with 2 caps. I go, what the hell's going on here, right? And it took me about 3/4 of an hour to figure it out. And he told me on the phone it was the greatest thing since sliced bread. And I had to agree with him when I finally figured it out. I go, oh, damn, yeah. Because it made loading our holes, the way we loaded our holes, a lot easier, and the hookup really easy. Okay? And it may be easy, but it's not student-proof, right? Because you only hook them up one way, right? And if you try and hook them up backwards, you didn't shoot that way. Okay, so the students are always there to, Orica, sorry. I'm getting a bit behind you. Orica, of course, they came out fairly soon with handy debts, and at that time, it was ICI or energetic systems, and everything was handy bulk, handy that. So they said, we want to show these to the students. So I'm going, okay. So they came in, and it was a couple of my old students, or our old graduates. They weren't my students, they're old graduates from Roll. And they started, and they did this, and they said, it's handy this, handy that, handy the other. And then right at the end, they say, and this system, in conclusion, is very easy to use. And I go, didn't you mean handy? And I got some death stares that day. The problem, they also have easy drifters. Now, these don't worry about it. Just don't go on yet. Easy drifters, the underground version. But it's okay when you've got regular bench rows on the surface hooking up. It's really easy. But underground, it doesn't go in straight lines. It goes woo, out like that, outwards. So it's really, really complicated, and you need people with their A game to do it. And in the text, I talk about an accident that was at St. Louis Airport that I had to go and have a look at. Okay, and people hadn't hooked it up correctly. They had the B team instead of the A team, and there were a whole bunch of misfires. And then the A team was called in, and they were drilling the last hole at the bottom of the round, and they hit a cap, and it was like very unlucky because usually the caps don't go off because they're very resistant to being set off, by the way. And statistics, if you look at these statistics, there's not many people killed by drilling into blasting caps, right? Okay. And statistics is, if you look at fatalities and injuries, okay, that'll tell you what the dangers are. Don't believe in folklore and granny's tales, right? Look at the statistics. And anyway, he drilled into that, and it blew up, and the guy was really severely injured. And it's a pity because he definitely was the A team. I'd seen his work before, and he did meticulous blasting records. I'd seen him on a number of other shots and projects. Detonating cord predates the non-L, but okay. Out west, it's hard to get them to move from detonating cord, and the reason is because the military manuals say you can't bury a detonator, right? because if it doesn't go off, then you've got to dig it up and find out where it is, because, you know, if you're doing demolition work, you're retreating, and they want to make sure you do it right. Unfortunately, I went over to they must have had a whole bunch of industry guys out in the West, and they used to, and still do, use detonating cord quite a lot now. Tristan tells me it's really, really cheap. You know, trying to find out prices off explosive companies is really difficult, by the way, but for the students here, unless you want to buy some, then they'll tell you, but, you know, put a bid out. But anyway, so they still try to hang on to detonating cord, and you know, oh no, non-L won't work, you know, and yeah, but we shoot it in all the quarry stuff. Oh, but that's out east. Out west is different, right? So, I don't know, but whatever. It's been an uphill battle, but places like Round Mountain, I'm told now, have gone away from detonating cord finally. It's been so many years trying to argue with them, but hey, you know, it's a problem. I guess you have to wait sometimes till the old guys retire. But DuPont figured out that they wanted something that was better than detonating cord, and they made this low-energy detonating cord. Kurt, can you do the next one? Okay, I'm going to skip this one here. Oh, no. Oh, there's Easy Drifters. Sorry. There's some out of our magazine. Next one. Okay. So anyway, next one, please. Okay, so they had this thing called Detoline, and it was 1.4 grains per foot instead of 50 grains, right? So this thing didn't blow holes in stemming and didn't destroy your explosives. However, the makers got a batch of PTN wrong, and it wasn't nitrated properly, and all of a sudden, this system died overnight. I believe there was a lawsuit about it. I saw reference to that. And I know because all of a sudden everybody would give me this deadline, right? Oh, we've got this stuff in the back of the magazine. Do you want it, Paul? So I take out a whole, I try to shoot it and it won't shoot. So I got a whole roll of it and I stick a dynamite in it and see if this will shoot it. No, it didn't, but it threw it up in the trees. So I've got this deadline hanging around, got a deadline hanging around in the trees for about 10, 15 years until it totally rotted away. And people would say, well, isn't that explosive, Paul? I go, well, if a stick of dynamite didn't set it off, it didn't explosive, right? So anyway, but about the same time period, you'd find quarries that had it was like out west, Monument Valley, you know, with John Wayne riding through. You can imagine John Wayne on his horse with his cavalry troop, and those big buttes. There were all these quarries that had these buttes. And I heavily suspect that that's because that was one of the quarries. One of those quarries gave me some deadline that didn't work. So, okay, so we're getting on to delays. So next one. Okay, and cap scatter. And this is the problem was reliability of caps. I went to Scotland to Nitro. Nobel explosives and to get some training before I came here, some formal training, and they set out a whole bunch of stakes, and they have bet cord and caps there, RLPs, and they had them in the correct order, and they shot them, and at least 2 out of the series fired out of order. And people were going, those 2 fired out of it. And the guy was going, no. You must have blinked or something, right? Which was the typical sort of power salesman patter at that point. But anyway, so what happened, this guy called Steve Windsor in the late 70s started doing some research on National Science Foundation grant and found out there was this huge scatter in caps. And what happened was... what ended up happening is everybody, all the sales guys, no, this Windsor guy's got it all wrong and everything. And then Atlas Powder bought out Master Debts to replace the Rock Masters, which were higher precision. And they claim that these actually fire in the correct order. Okay, so, and probably out of the factory, they probably did. Okay. So anyway, next one. What the hell did I? Oh no, yeah. So I got it right. when I first came over here, and all this hoo-ha was going on about detonator accuracy, and caps firing out of order and stuff like that. So I started working on electronic detonators pretty soon as I got over. And I worked with a guy called John Tyler, who was an electronics guy. And at the time, they were bringing in very large-scale integration. It was in its infancy, and they were starting to bring it in. So you could put everything on a single computer chip. Okay? And so we put in patent stuff on this. We figured it all out, put patents in. Here's the actual patent I'm showing down there. And that's, it's 4,674,047 US patents. So that took a long time to come out, but we did work, did a patent disclosure in '82, and we filed it in November '82 for the patent, and then we started publishing February '83, first fast ISEE, and then the first frag blast in August '83, and the patent was finally granted in '87. Patents take a long, long time, by the way. Okay, we visited Tamaqua plant for Atlases, which has been taken down a long time ago, but it was a big detonator place and explosives, very old plant, and visited Dave Borg, who was head of tech services, and Frank Chiappetta. Young Frank Chiappetta then used to work for Atlas on their tech services, and we went and talked to them and everything. And they were working at that time with breadboards, and they were firing instant detonators with breadboards on the circuit and a surface. And the problem with that, it's not fully activated, so you can get a lot of cutoffs and everything. But they were in their infancy there. Okay, on that. Okay, but we were sort of jumped ahead of that big scale. So when I went over to Sweden, what happened was, next one. Okay, to frag blast. There's me on Perandis' boat. Okay, I'm crewing for him. And one of my claims to fame is I've been skinny dipping with Perandis person. Hey, I'm just telling you, do not attempt to open a swimwear shop in Sweden. They don't use it. Okay. I'm not kidding, right? It's quite interesting. Okay, so I visited Perandis person. Okay, and he was on the selection committee, and he was very, very interested in electronic detonators and also some of the numbers I'd taken off caps and things like that. And he confided in me, and we went around the Gutorp. Did I have one? Next one, see if it shows dynamite and Gutorp. Does it? No.
Yeah.
Did it? No. Oh, there we are. That's it. Okay. So there's the plant there with the dynamite with Gutorp on it. And they're also making the non-L there, of course. And he was worried. His worry was that they had fantastic quality control there. And I went and had a look at it, and they were taking batches out of every batch that was taking caps out of it, and they were testing them for actual time duration. They had a tube they put them in, and then they'd fire it, and it would have electronic time and tell them actually what the fire time was. And he was really worried that age really had a big difference on those delay times. And in fact, it actually does. Okay, and there's been a number of papers over the years on it. Okay, now I'm going to go a bit forward because I'm running into your boozing time here, but okay. One of the problems, getting out there and getting ahead of the industry is a little bit of a problem because in the explosive industry, it used to be that if it ain't our idea, we're not going to buy it off you, and we're going to wait and see what happens. And if it works out good, we'll buy you out. Right? So it's the idea that it's best to be second in the market because if you're first, it might not work. You've spent a lot of money on it, but if somebody else is first and it works, then, okay, you don't have much development cost. And then you can always buy somebody out. And it's the sort of thing that works a lot in, you've seen a lot in, in US industry and electronics and computers, like Google's buying everybody, and they work to find something that works nice and say, oh, now we'll buy it, right? So it's a matter of risk. So one of the problems was this patent we had, things were being developed around the world and being used around the world, but they weren't being brought into the US. And I got a horrible sneaky suspicion it was because of our patent. So what we did was we decided not to renew the patent, because that way people would bring things into the US. And as soon as we didn't renew the patent and we told everybody, all of a sudden electronic detonators started being coming into the US and being sold here. Okay, so I want to tell you something. Don't get me wrong, I'm not mad about people copying stuff, because some of the people did a fantastic job. They took it from where our concept was and made it even better. And for all you young guys, okay, don't take it as an insult if somebody steals an idea off you or whatever, because they're not really. Because imagine at college, right, and you wanted to get some homework done, okay, and you had a real short time period, so you're going to go to somebody to give you a helping hand, right? You don't go to the dumbass in the class, right, and copy his stuff, right? You go to the best person you can find that's willing to do it. So if somebody copies, you take it as a compliment. It's very important. Got to understand about that. But, we all have our little failures, and everybody says, learn from your failures. Failures are really important because you learn something from it. And it's important for you guys to learn from other people's failures. Okay? Right? So you don't do the same things yourself. So at the first frag blast, and I've got a tie here with elephants and tigers and leopards and everything on it. First frag blast in not the first one. That was in 83, I think. This was the one in South Africa in 99 there in Johannesburg. And Claude Cunningham, some of the guys here know Claude. There was another guy called Mick Lowndes, they were like inseparable twins, right? But did they work for opposing explosive companies? Yeah, that's right. It's quite strange. But anyway, because usually, people are like sworn enemies, right? But these two guys were tight as anything. And so we were talking, and we were walking down the, So I got ahead of myself here. So we're up there, and they have the banquet and everything, and Claude stands up and says something about it. And the day before, we went to their facility, and they did they shot like 600 detonators with slaved units, electronic detonators icon system. And they did this demonstration for everybody at the conference. And it was just fantastic. And then during the banquet, he got up and gave a speech, and he acknowledged me for work I'd done early on that was important to them in their development of the icon system. And he told a very, very funny story, okay, because it's always important to have funny stories, right? How I was so engrossed in this, I was walking down the street in Luleå at the first frag blast, and I was so engrossed in talking about electronic detonators back in 83, I walked slap bang into a street sign. I bounced off it, and I kept going, right? I mean, I hardly missed a beat in the conversation, right? Which they thought was hilarious, but hey, now we change over time, let's put it that way. Okay. Yeah, well, there's a whole ton of work going electronic detonators, and I've just used the icon because that was the system at Frag Blast in Johannesburg that they showed. And all sorts of other people, all sorts of different 2-wire, 4-wire, there are all sorts of different people in the market. But click next one. Okay, there we are. Ensign Bickford came up with the Digidet non-electric electronic. You go, what? Non-electric electronic. And it's really novel. And this was way back, I'm trying to think what year it was. It was around about the 95, 97 time frame. But they actually had some problems with it. It's popped back up on the market again. So I don't know if they're actually selling it or starting to sell it or whatever, or how long it's been out, but it's actually popped back up again. So, this is like 20 odd years later, but almost 25 years later. But it was really neat because what happened is the 9L fires down and it hits a small explosive charge, and that goes off. It's got a piezoelectric cell rammed up against it, and it gets shocked, and it causes electric current that goes into the capacitor, and it starts all the circuitry, and then it works down a pre-programmed delay. Counts down, and when it's finished that delay, it just goes, dumps all that energy, remaining energy to the bridge wire down the bottom. You can see that igniter on the right-hand side, pretty much similar to Julius Smith's, a little bit more sophisticated, but the same idea. And then into the end of the detonator, which is almost the same as Alfred's Nobels, right? Except it's got different explosive in it. Okay, so and that's what I used for one of my original things. So why electronic detonators? There's other reasons as well that really spurred things forwards. It wasn't just caps firing out of order. And OSM regulations came in. And they were loosely based on our USPN RI 8507, which you guys probably get to hear a lot about, and the infamous Siskin Z-curve. So when this came out, people were just madder than anything. They were madder than hornets. And a hive of killer bees. And I was fresh at the conferences, and I was like, hell, they were cussing Dave Siskin up and down like nobody's business. Just, oh man, it was vicious. And the poor guy, working with USPN like this. And, last year, it was last year, wasn't it? He gave this presentation. Yeah, and hey, how things changed over time. And, but anyway, okay, out of this whole, because they didn't want it, and out of this whole thing, the seismograph industry did very well, by the way. This was really good for the seismograph industry. And seismograph guys will say, yeah, we sold a lot of seismographs, did very well out of it. Okay, so the thing was, you didn't want one of those little peaks there going on the wrong side of the curve, right? Because then you'd have a violation. But Dave Siskin talked all about this last time. Now, the whole thing now was, well, we need to bring those levels down so they're compliant. And we knew there was a thing called resonant frequency, and if you hit the ground at the wrong frequency, it could increase ground vibrations. Okay, so there are two camps of thought how to reduce blast vibration. The first one was anti-resonant frequency, so the ground doesn't want to respond at certain frequencies, so if you hit it at that, then you don't tend to get much vibrations, okay? And then the other one was wave stacking, which is signature analysis. So next one, please. Okay, what happened was around that time period, early 80s, the oil industry was getting into buying coal mines, diversifying, right? And they had a lot of people in there with seismic knowledge, and one of them was Otto Krenwell. So what he took was he did some fast Fourier transforms, or their full Fourier transforms there, or whatever. And there's a whole bunch. Just look at that first one, and you can see you've got high places, you've got low places. The high places is where the rock will transmit the energy at those frequencies, and the little lows, the spikes going down at frequencies at which the rock will not transmit the energy very well. So his whole idea was to look at that. We're looking one there, and on the left there about 10, and then further over, I can't see what it is, there's a dwell point there, it's probably 25 hertz or something like that. So the whole point was to find a good frequency the rock didn't like, and then things wouldn't shake much. Okay, basically. Okay. So the other one, okay, the next one. Yeah, as well, wave profile stacking. The first ones I can see was from Doug Anderson and signature analysis. So you shot one hole, you took a waveform, and then you stacked it. It's the sort of thing that the oil industry did a lot for exploration. And then you look at that and see what waveform, resulting waveform there is. And they came up with this thing called Vibramap. I'm trying to get a picture of it. It was the old one, and it was black and white, and it was in one of the first journal episodes that came out. And it was actually printed instead of nice colours and stuff like that we got these days. The only way they could do it was it printed out, okay, in hashtags and ampersands and slashes and commas. And in those days, you could get a grayscale from that. If you stood back and looked at it, wherever it was darkest, that's where your most vibrations were. So they did it, okay, for delay period and frequency, try to avoid the very dark areas, basically. Even Vibrotech didn't have a copy of that. But anyway, that was really, really nice. But what was the problem? Okay, next one. Okay, we couldn't apply them because there's too much scatter, right? So there are these great techniques, but nobody could do anything. They're all advertised and stuff like that, and then, yeah, but we can't do it. So we kind of, shot the gun early, if you say that. So, what happened? These guys moved on. I'm sorry, I'm running a bit, but I'll have it finished pretty quick. These guys ran on, and Otto left, and a lot of people retired, and then finally electronic detonators came on the market, and then everybody forgot how to use them. Okay, I was one of the youngest guys there at the time, right? So, and you're looking at it, right? So, what we ended up was reinventing the wheel. So, this story is about 2005, and Kurt knows this well because I've been showing him a little bit. But, so, Springfield Underground, we're going to try and blast underneath the Springfield Utilities or water system tank, a big water tank on the surface. And the civil engineers, they're being civil engineers, we don't know anything about this. So we're going to take the house vibrations, because we know if we're safe for houses, then we're safe for water tanks, right? Because they're made of big steel structures and they've got huge mass and they're not going to do anything. So they put a 2 inch per second limit on it. And it was on the high frequency end anyway. But they were going, I think it was 80 feet, wasn't it, underneath it? Only 80 feet underneath this big water tank. Oh, water tank was bigger than this room, right? Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was a big water tank. It was pretty important. But anyway, those things are immensely strong. And we're going to hit it with high frequency vibrations, so it's not going to do anything. So anyway, so they were having problems keeping the vibrations down as they came closer to 2 inches per second. They wanted to mine underneath it. So I got a phone call. They got, Kurt in, who was a rep for, tech rep for Orica at the time. It was Orica at that point, wasn't it? Or was it Energetics? It was Orica at that point. And, he pulled in Randy Wheeler. I don't know if Randy's here today. He's probably down at the booth. They called me up as well. So I didn't get in there the first day. I got in there the second day, and I walk into the office, and Kurt's standing there with his head down like this. And I go, Kurt, what's wrong? He goes, we just had the highest ground vibrations we've ever had. And I go, Kurt, what did you do? And he goes, well, I said, I'm going to apply these icons, right? And so I swapped them out with the non-L, and I just punched in exactly the same delay periods on the icons. I go, oh my God, you didn't. Now this is underground, right? I go, oh no. Baseline somewhere. Yeah, baseline somewhere. Well, hey, okay. So around the edge of the round, because we've only got so many delays with non-L, right? You're going to end up putting 6 or 7 on the same delay.
Well, you think, oh, that's bad. But remember, you've got with non-Ls, you've got those little delay elements. You've got scatter in your favour. Sorry about that. It's just now plot efficiency. See, Tristan could say it, okay, but okay, I'm deficient at the moment. So what happened was, but when you put the same delays in electronic, they had 6 or 7 caps going bang at the same time, right? So all of a sudden, vibrations went off the scale, kind of, and not really, but I mean, it was the highest. I thought, oh God, we've done it. Okay, here's the thing: when you're using precise instruments, okay, you get it precisely right, but unfortunately, you can get it precisely wrong, and that's what happened. So there's that reinventing the wheel. Something was really interesting because we were so close. When you have that one signature hole, it goes, and it's like a little guitar string, and it's a little wave, and it damps out pretty quick. But it's one frequency. Okay, so Randy goes, oh, well, here's the wavelength. We need to shoot at half the wavelength, so that's half the period. So the first hole, after the first hole pushes, it starts pulling, and as it starts pulling, you shoot the second hole and make it push. So that's destructive interference. Okay, so that's what we did. It came out, what was it, about 12 milliseconds? So actually, if you think about it, a destructive interference would be 12 milliseconds. That means a constructive was at 24 milliseconds. And if you look at a normal wave, normal MS series, they're 25 milliseconds apart. So 25 milliseconds was definitely a bad number to be using, right? So the only thing you had was that first wave, the first push, and that was pretty high. So what we did was, in this V cut, we had these buster holes, and we got a paper in on it, in this where, Kurt's on it, and Braden Lusk's on it, and everything. And we shot some of these first at smaller, so that we had a small one, and then we used the negative tail on it to fire up the next one, to clip a bit of that, and so that we managed to road that big first time. Now, Kurt said, well, you need to put so much delay between the V and the next thing. I said, no, we'll have that first thing again. We've got to keep on shooting it until the whole end. And he said, well, the books say it won't work. I said, look, the rounds they're shooting down here anyway, according to the books, don't work, right? and so we did it, and it worked fantastic. They had some of the best breakers they ever had, lowest ground vibrations. And so take something from this. Don't believe everything you see written in the book. Example, Harry Potter. Okay, so how many? Oh, we got down to final words. Oh, yeah. So, Braden had this thing called rhythmic. He talks about rhythmic blasting, and what's it here?
John, he's left.
Oh, he's left. Okay. Well, then I can back talk about it. So, no, but they have this thing called rhythmic blasting. It means to keep the rhythm up. So you go bum, 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 and you go for that destructive frequency. Instead of bum, 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 da-dum, bum, 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 da-dum, bum, 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 da-dum, right? Because that really complicates things. So you need to be firing one hole at a time with the right separation, okay, on your blast. Now, the other thing is sonic velocity of the rock. If you have Doppler effect, if you shoot a hole, a row this way, it will have a different response than a hole shot that way, because the real actual times between those wavelets, shoot this way will be different from shooting that way because of the Doppler effect. Okay, so sometimes you have to take that into consideration as well, actual physical positioning of holes. And the best software does that. Okay? So we kind of come around in full circle. The accuracy of pyrotechnic delays is a tool. A tool is a tool, and it's only as good as the craftspeople, persons using it in their vision, basically. So all you young guys out there, think about this stuff, and there's lots of new things to do out there. It all hasn't been done before. So I'm going to put this final word up, and I have run over a bit, but you know, when I wrote this and prepared the presentation, it was difficult because the subject matter of detonators is really, really extensive. It just goes on and on and on. And I could, you know, one could easily get a book out of it, or a full college or two credit courses, right? Easily. And I've just done this an hour and a half. So I had to pay her back extensively, and I purposely missed out a whole host of different types of detonators, including mainly on the military side, but some on our side as well: stab, exploding bridge wire, exploding force, slappers, semiconductor bridge wires, induced current and laser initiated detonators. Okay, and then some other things on the non-L replacements like Grinnell, which is Brazilian. And I even had time or space to talk about all the different types of electronic detonators, because there's been a lot of them over the time, and their pros and cons. So I want to just say as a final thing, so developers, manufacturers out here in this room, and salespersons, please forgive me if I have not included your products, because I know that's going to upset some people. Well, I didn't see my product up there. But for the dyno guys, okay, what's a dyno electronic caps? I don't know the Austin stuff. I just want to say, okay, if you see an actual live picture of something, that's because we got it in our magazine. So if, you know, you want to give something you haven't seen today, then we take it. I've got approximately about, well, it wouldn't be me, but now I've handed it over, 20,000 odd detonators at the moment. We try and keep enough in there of all the different types so we can show the students everything we possibly can of the systems on the market today, and do a lot of shooting hands-on, which is really important. So, okay, I don't know, I've gone, well, we did start a bit late, but I usually go over, I'm renowned for that. So thank you very much for staying here and listening to what I've got to say.
As an appreciation for your service to the industry and to the emerging professionals, we got you a plaque.
Well, thank you very much. That's one of the things students do, and I just want to say something today. It's a real pleasure to have my son, and he's doing so well in the industry as well, and one of our, you know, up-and-coming stars and everything, and that makes me very, very proud as I go into retirement. Okay.